Okay, a few notes before we jump into the lesson. We've seen the blueprintable class specifier, which means that blueprint classes can inherit from the class. We also have something called blueprint type, and when we set the specifier, the class can then be used in blueprints as a type for variables, and of course then also as a function input or a return value. So blueprint type is used instead of blueprintable when we want to use the class as a variable, but we don't want the class to be inheritable by blueprint classes for performance reasons. So we'll explore some of these ideas in the video. We'll also see later on in the video how we can actually instantiate a variable of some class type to create an object of that class. Okay, so let's jump in. For now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to delete this blueprint. So I'll just right click and click delete, and then I'll click delete right here. And so our blueprints folder is empty now. Then I'll go back into Visual Studio, double click on this and press delete, go back into Unroll Editor here and compile. Okay, with that compile complete, I'd like to go back into C++ classes, CPP experiments. If I right click on a C++ class now, I cannot create a blueprint class based on that. Now in some cases, we want to create variables of some class type, a variable based on a class. And so for example, what I'll do is I'll go into blueprints and I'll open the level blueprint. So what I mean is if you click here and I'll name that demo object and you click this drop down. So what we want to do is we want to create a variable of our class. So if I search, you'll see my object does not show up. So what we can do, I'll go back into Visual Studio and we have another specifier here for the U class called blueprint type. So if I go back again, Unroll Editor here, and I'll compile this. Okay, so that's complete. And I'm in the C++ classes folder. If I right click on my object, the C++ class, it is not blueprintable, but it does have this blueprint type. Again, that allows us to create variables based on that type. So I can go back into that drop down and search for my object. I can now create variables of this type, as you can see. So before moving on, I'll just go back to Visual Studio again and I'll add blueprintable. So now it's both blueprintable and we are also explicitly stating that we want the ability to create variables of this class. Again, I'll go and I'll compile that. Okay, that compilation is complete. And if I right click on this, you can see we can create a blueprint again. So I'll do that. My object blueprint, and I'll choose this folder here, blueprints, as my path. Create that class. We are not concerned with this blueprint currently. I just wanted to mention that you can do that, and you can do my object blueprint now as well. So both the class, the C++ class, and the blueprint can now be the variable type. Okay, so here you have a bunch of things. What we want is this first one, object reference. Now what this will do is it will reference an instanced object of that type. So that is what we want. We need to actually create an instance of that. A good place to do that will be in the begin play. So event begin play. I might think we can just drag this in and maybe get it or set it somehow, but this is just a class. Okay, you can think of it as a data container. It contains members, whether those are variables or functions. So just like in C++, we have to construct it. We have to instantiate it. And we do that in blueprints by using the construct object from class node. And you can see currently it says none, so construct none. I'll just wire that in. So as soon as begin play gets called, again, we're in the level blueprint currently. You can see that has the same name as the level. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to select the object that you want to construct. Okay, this first one, the class, is what it is that we actually want to create an instance of. So I'll click this drop down and I'll select my object pp. You can also select my object, but I'll select my object pp in this case. And outer is basically the owner of the constructed object. So as I mentioned, we need to instantiate an object. The object has to belong to something. So in other words, let's say you have an actor, which is something that spawns in the world, for example. Let's say the level starts and then that actor spawns. Then we can construct or instantiate an object and have that actor be the owner of that constructed object. Now similarly, we are in the level blueprints currently. This you can think of as that it will be instantiated when the level begins. This blueprint gets instantiated when the level begins. And again, it's associated with a particular level, so each level has its own level blueprint. So the owner will be this level blueprint. So what we can do is we can do self. This will get a reference to self. So in other words, a reference to this instance of the blueprint, this level blueprint. So when the level begins, we construct this object. So what class do we want to create an instance of? In this case, is a blueprint. What do we want to attach it to? Because if it's not attached to anything, if it's just floating around, then it will probably get garbage collected, okay, before we can use it, probably. So we don't want that. We want to attach it to an owner. And self, in this case, is this level blueprint, okay, this particular instance of the level blueprint. It can also be an actor. And you can see this will now return something. It will return the constructed object. And so what we can do is we can either drag this in and set this demo object, which again is a variable of type myObjectBlueprint, and we can wire this in like this, and that will set this variable that we created equal to the constructor. Basically, this is the constructor, and that will set this variable equal to this. Okay, or what you can do is you can delete that and you can right click and you can promote this to a variable. You can create a new variable. You will see this. This will also be of type myObjectBlueprint. Okay, so whichever one you want. Okay, and what we can do now is we can use this instead of a get node, because what you can do is you can use, so get, for example, and then you can do hello or whatever else you want to call. So the functions or members of that, whichever is available, we have this variable and we want to print that function, or we want to call that function. This is basically all we need. I'll compile this, we don't get any errors, and I'll save that. Okay, so now when I click play, you will see in the output log that hello. You can see all this rubbish in here that we don't care about. So what I'll do is I'll clear the log. I'll stop the game actually, and then I'll clear the log. And then we can filter, and I'll turn off messages and errors. Because sometimes in some of the previous videos you probably saw a few HTTP and various other warnings. And I think that relates to my antivirus stuff. Of course you can turn on errors if you want, but we want to see the warnings. And the warning, I'll bring up Visual Studio again, my object CPP. You can see this is set to warning. So what I'll do is I'll click play again, and you'll see log temp warning hello, just as we have it in here. We print that text out. Okay, cool. So I'll stop that. I'll clear my log, and just out of interest, you can create a blueprint class, and I'll choose actor in this case. Call it demo actor. You can call it dummy actor or whatever you want. I'll drag it in here, Now this is basically an empty actor, it doesn't actually do anything in this case. Double click on that to open it up. I'll delete all of this stuff. And we'll start from scratch. You can delete these two if you want. Okay, I'll close that off. Then in the demo actor, again, that is in the level, and it will spawn as soon as we start the game. You will see, if we search the world outliner here, you see demo actor has spawned in our world. I'll stop that and go to the event graph. When the game begins, this actor will be in the level. And so when the game begins, then in that case, the actor is in the level, and we want to spawn or attach an object of type myObject to this instance of the actor. So what I'll do is, again, I'll do construct object from class, and I'll choose myObject pp as the class to create an instance of an object, in other words. And here again, I'll do self, a reference to this instance of the blueprint. We do not have a variable of that type. So what I'll do is I'll right click and I'll promote that to a variable. I don't care about the name in this case. So again, it will construct that. This is like the constructor that it calls. That's like calling new in C++. So this would usually be on the left. You set this equal to what you put in the constructor, basically. You can think of it that way. Things are a bit reversed and a bit weird in blueprints. We just have to kind of get used to it. Okay, I'll drag off to hello. So what this means is, again, we have this is a and has a relationship. So an A actor is a UObject. Okay, that is part of the inheritance tree. Don't worry about this too much. We will explore this further as we go along and when we actually talk about actors. But here we have this demo actor, okay, that we created as a blueprint. That's actually named incorrectly. Now that I think about it, we should have added an underscore pp to that. But in any case, this now has a myObject underscore pp object as part of that. So we've created has a relationship between that demo actor and myObject pp, okay, those blueprints. But just because that actor now has as part of it that object, that does not mean it's automatically constructed. Because if you remember, in the C++ class that we originally declared, that did not have the object, okay? So we are adding that object, creating that has a relationship in the blueprint, not in the C++. So we need to actually construct the variable that we create in blueprints as well. So if you look at it this way, again, it's not that difficult, and I hope you can see from this like what's going on. I'll compile all of this stuff and save it. I'll save all of this and I'll click play. And in the output log, we should get this now. Okay, I'll clear my log, click play, and you see we get that hello printed out to the screen. Of course, if I have multiple actors now, save and play, you'll see you'll get a bunch of those in the output log now. 3 because we have 3 of those actors. So I hope this makes sense. You can see it's fairly easy to construct instances or objects of a particular class. So we are not placing, again, the objects into the level, into our world. You can see we cannot do that, but we can do it with the actor. And the actor, again, is the owner of, just open that up again, this variable here. So it's a variable type of that class that we construct here, then we can use it. And as soon as these actors are destroyed, then because of this setting here, these actors are all owners again of objects, the myObject variables that we set here. And when they get destroyed, or basically the level ends, okay, and the world outliner, your scene gets cleaned up and will destroy all of your actors, then the object will be marked for garbage collection. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And what I'll do is I'll just delete all of these. remove that filter. Okay, so I hope this gives you a better idea of UObjects. We are not quite done yet. There are quite a few more things that we can discuss relating to UObjects, but I hope this was a good introduction. So I'll see you in the next lesson.